Hello.
You want to call the meeting to order?
I don't have any volume.
We hear you.
So do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay, so we can go ahead and start then?
Yeah, let's roll call.
Okay. Tammy?
So we got Chairman Pete. Go ahead, Wes.
Wes Carter. Oh, sorry. Wes Carter.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Page.
Hey, just going down the line.
Kim Hartley.
Thanks, Kim.
Joe Papa.
All right. Pete Page,
Yeah, I'm here.
still with us? I
Yeah.
think that's it. And Doug and Tammy and myself. Doug, Doug, Doug with McGill, Doug Chapman.
Okay. So can we go ahead and start, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is the Town of Blowing Rock Planning Board meeting, electronic remote meeting agenda for Thursday, May 21st at 5:30. I'll call the meeting to order. The roll has been called. accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
Mike Page, so moved.
Second,
Okay, so first by Mike
Kim Hartman.
and a second by Kim. Okay. I'll also accept a motion for approval of the minutes.
Need to act on the motion.
Oh, okay. So our,
All in favor?
it's been approved. Are there any questions or comments, or can they be moved for approval?
It's, you can call for a vote.
Okay, call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay. Sounds like that's unanimous. The next item is approval of the minutes. Need a to approve the prior month's minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Who said that?
I need a second.
Okay.
Was there a second on that?
Seconded.
Okay. Discussion or comment? Okay, move for a vote of approval.
Aye. Page.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, business at hand, as everybody knows from the information that has been sent from Kevin and Tammy, was the discussion of Highway 321, visioning recommendations. Thought what we would do is would have Kevin start by giving us his overview and his thoughts and what we need to accomplish. So Kevin, I'll let you start and then we'll work down the line. Kevin?
Okay. I'll just summarize the what I did is just sent you the summary of what I received back from some board members. And then I made a few notes as we get into discussion, a couple of things. But the first group is from Bill McCarter. It says, Blowing Rock should acquire DOT property on the east side of Valley Boulevard. I represent DOT in the sale of unused right-of-way, so I can help with this project. If it's talking about the actual properties like the Tanner Building, Scotchman, and some of those, I believe those are all under contract. If it's talking about right-of-way, I don't know that we really need to get into purchase of right-of-way. We're already going to be involved in the maintenance of it anyway. So I don't know where that may benefit us too much, but it's a consideration. Survey, I wonder if the participants dislike the occupants out back in A1 Pest more than the appearance of the building. I did hear comments about A1 Pest, about them being there. I didn't hear any opposition about Outback, and that is somewhat of a corporate look for Outback, but they did make some changes to their color scheme when that building was built, and then a few years ago made additional changes. I will say A1 didn't do very little to reoccupy the building. They did build a parking lot and a new sign, but there wasn't much to do. I guess they could have volunteered to do some other things, but that building was really ready to go other than interior. And a lot of change happened with the right of way, with the road construction. So there wasn't much that they could do. And so they, maybe A1 is not the most ideal, but it's an office, and that's what it has been. And I think they've done a good job with it. Just comments on A1. Anybody else have any thoughts on what that building out there is?
Looks like it's always looked. I mean, except for the parking lot, it's a good parking lot.
Yeah.
Kevin, this is Mike Page. Is the color of the doorways a part of our palette?
I think it's a green. I don't know that it showed up a lot different in the photograph than it actually is, but
It's a fairly jarring difference between the facade of the building and the doors. That may be a problem for some. Why would anybody object to A1 just because it's A1?
I don't know. There were comments during the two meetings that, seemed to be slighting A1 pest control. And I said, well, we've got pesticides.
So it's just not fitting to have a bug killer right on the bypass.
Yeah, I mean, at least they don't have a bug on top of the roof like they do on some of the vehicles. I think it's tasteful for a service industry customer.
It's a lot nicer than their headquarters.
Yeah.
Very much so. I think it was more so that it was at the entrance of Blowing Rock and there was a pest control business at the beginning when people came in. I think that was the take I came from the public thing. But I think they've done a good job. They keep it very well maintained. And I do think the picture of the building, the green comes off differently than what it is. It's just a hunter green that has a sheen to it that threw a reflection.
Yeah. It made it look like it was turquoise or something.
Tilly. Mm-hmm.
The next comment was, I was surprised to learn that you had recommended color palettes in the code. We have quite a few design guidelines that have considered putting together a handbook. The color palette that is in the study is what is in our office, and those colors were adopted in 1997. So, maybe there's too many, but I think there's also a voice for those that say, look, we don't want the whole town to be tan and brown, but we can certainly look at those colors that are available, and if we need to tighten it up a little bit, certainly can do. Again, 23 years, the same color palette's been available.
Kevin, who would do that? Whose responsibility would it be to limit the colors from where they already are? And is it necessary?
First part of the question, it would be planning board and council. Number two, is it necessary? I think if there's an outcry to say these colors are wrong in this town, we shouldn't even allow the ones that we do, then we look at it. Otherwise, we just keep moving along. When they were first done, there was an architectural review board, and commercial projects had to go through a 3-step process: architectural review, planning board, and then council. Once the design standards were developed, there was no use for the appearance commission anymore. So they phased the appearance board out and used the code as it was. Hey, Bill, we're going over your comments.
No, perfect timing. Sorry I'm late.
I was just answering, little bit of feedback in answering the questions that you posed, and we're at the third one about the color palette, and was sharing with them that they those colors have been around since '97. An architectural review board put those together, and there hasn't been any changes. We work within those colors. I think there's 250. And so applications come in for signs or building colors, and we work within that. And we work with the applicant on some flexibility, but nothing outrageous.
So Kevin, like you say, if there's not a problem with it, let's just leave it as is and just go forward.
Well, again, I'm just providing some commentary. If I want this to be y'all's process, and if you know, majority of y'all say, look, we need to look at these colors and consider some changes, we'll go forward, and we'll pose that as a recommendation from planning board. If this body's fine with what we got, then we'll look at leaving it.
Kevin, it's Mike Page. Sort of putting that back to you. You're the one, or the town administration is the one that has to deal with people who come in with a proposal and do the color chart. Does that present a problem for you?
It has not. I think the colors we have is pretty strict. You don't really go very far with blues and reds. Most of the reds are kind of a burnt red or a dark. It has, and Tammy deals with it too with signs. For example, we talk about a sign application for a corporate like Subway. We try not to stand in the way of corporate colors, but we do work with them on trying to back them off, like the yellow at Subway. That's a couple of shades lighter than what their standard yellow on Subway is. We do it in a participatory way. We don't try to say this is what you can do and that's it. But for 19 years, it's worked pretty well.
Well, that was the reason for my question. You do have some interplay when you talk with a person who comes in with colors in mind, and Subway is a good case in point. You don't have to hold them. Well, you've got some administrative flexibility that changing the color chart wouldn't make a difference to.
Right. We do have some flexibility. I'll give you an example of something that's coming. Holiday Inn is planning to make some changes to the sign that they have for visibility, for one. By the time you see the sign, you've passed the driveway and you got to go up and turn around. So they want to put some elevation on their sign, and they want to change to some of the blue and green as part of their corporate image. And so we'll work with them that the background be complementary and the framing be complementary to the business or to the building, and then the corporate colors be integrated into that. So that's kind of where we do it.
I'm comfortable with that.
All right. I'll move on. Bill stated he's not a fan of calculating points to determine compliance. He would rather have a minimum standard than offer incentives for going beyond the minimum. I agree with that. I like a minimum standard, and a lot of people they see the finish line as the minimum, but there's also a lot that will go beyond that.
Yeah, that's the trick. Is what do you provide? How do you incentivize it? What do you provide as an option? I guess it depends on the criteria.
Right. What I want to convey through the whole visioning process on 321 is that we're dealing with a lot of buildings that have been there a long time and have not made any changes. I don't want to pick them apart. But new construction, at least since about mid-90s, has fit into that architectural flavor for the most part. I mean, not everybody agrees with every building that's been built. I think we have some very attractive ones out there. And there are some that, even though they're renovation, they've done well to make it appealing. And there's going to be changes in the next 5 years with some existing buildings. The Scotchman being a vacant building, I think there's some improvement that could be made to that it won't look like it does now, but it's not going to look like a brand new building. But I think an architect that is working on it now can do some good. So
That building's under contract.
I understand it is.
That building sold. The Scotchman is actually sold.
Okay. Britt Medley buy it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good.
Who buying it?
The next comment, rather than creating a new general business zoning district, have you considered an overlay district to limit the types of commercial uses along Valley Boulevard? My comment was that we may not need an overlay, but just use the base district that's general business and make the amendments to the standards, dimensions, and uses that are already in the code. That's the area that we're focusing on. So that's the only general business we have. So I don't know that we need an additional overlay. I think we just craft the language of those standards for general business to fit what we want.
Sounds good.
That's consistent with the 2014 plan as well.
Okay.
The 2014 plan carves out Valley Boulevard as a part of the
Yes.
study and a part of the recommendations.
Right.
And if you look at that, I'm not sure that there's anything to be gained by going beyond what we already have in place. Adult business establishments, the only thing that I could think of, and that may be something we have to look at when 160D comes into effect.
Right. The next set of questions, anybody have anything right now? Just chime in. If not, we'll move on to Mike's comments. About the first paragraph that Mike laid out, about the middle of it, he talks about addressing code changes to building materials, building heights, roof mounted equipment, and setbacks. And I think that's another comment further on, is looking at what I heard in the meetings was 20 feet may be too close of a setback, especially with the amount that DOT has taken. It's made the buildings even closer. And then I also heard, well, DOT took some land from us, and if we add additional setback to that, then we're limited on what we can do, especially if we're wanting to try to put the parking in the back or the side. There's not much left, and I hear that too. But I think a staggered approach where, okay, maybe not 50-foot building height at 20 feet. Maybe we look at a 30-foot building height at 20 feet and stagger it back for every 5 feet, 35 feet high at 20 or something like that. 25-foot setback, go to 40. 30-foot setback, go to 45. 35-foot setback, go to 50. Some kind of a staggered approach. Maybe that if y'all like that idea, we can address that. Building
What do you measure? Where do
Go
you
ahead.
measure that from? The ground at that point, or are you measuring it from the center of the road at that elevation?
The current code says measured from the adjacent grade at the primary entrance to the peak of the roof. So, for example, Holiday Inn, their primary entrance is down below the road, And so likewise, the building is going to be below the road. If they tore Holiday Inn down today, they could go 50 feet. Which I don't know that they could do much more with what they've got, and include a pitched roof in that structure as well. Downtown is measured differently. In most cases, it's measured from the sidewalk, but Valley Boulevard is measured from the front entrance. Excuse me, the primary entrance into the building.
Kevin, it's Mike Page. Are the properties so unique that each one is going to have to be considered on its own merits?
There will be some consideration for each property if they are unique. Otherwise, the standard code should apply across the board. If there's a situation that needs to be addressed, I think you take it. If there's a hardship that is created, then you address that. As the road project was ongoing, we saw some road elevation changes, especially at Papa Joe's and the bank. At the intersection at Sunset, there was some changes, 4, 5, 6 feet, maybe more of elevation change, which put those properties on the west side at a little bit of a disadvantage, especially for access, trying to get in and out. And you know what they did at the bank to try to make it. I don't think DOT helped us there, but I also understand they were limited in the scope of what they could do in trying to get drainage, underground utilities, and all the things that they had to get within that footprint. But there were some drawbacks, especially for those properties. I mean, Joe will tell you.
So, Kevin, this is Pete. I remember being on the ad hoc committee, and I remember when we were talking about some of this in the properties, the example of the barbecue place, which is up high, but then goes down into that valley. And, would that be a unique enough or standalone property that they would be given different consideration?
Well, the good thing about that property is that it's pretty big. And so they have a little more flexibility in what they could do. I would, if I was to look at developing that, my thought would be keep what you have up near the street, but also have some kind of component in the back. I don't know. I mean, it could be a lot of possibilities on how that property could be developed. But I think the property is 3.5 acres. So they have some, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm trying to envision how it could be done.
Well, I don't know that even at the ad hoc committee that we came up with, a suitable game plan for it. So I'm just wondering, moving forward, how that gets treated.
Our approach has been to let those that want to develop it come up with a design, and let's see what challenges would result out of that design. Instead of us getting ahead of them and saying, hey, let's do this with this site when it might be woodlands for another 30 years.
Right.
I think what we did in our ad hoc was identify the properties that are likely redevelopment pieces and those that are still vacant. Those that are unlikely to develop would be like Food Line. see that changing. That's major. There's 2 parcels beside the fire department. They're pretty narrow, but somebody could do something with them.
Many of the properties on Valley Boulevard have front parking. And I don't know personally that I don't object to it, but we're looking at recommending that there not be any parking in front of the buildings. Part of that having to do with the challenge being for many, how to do landscaping and how to do parking in the confines of the lots that are there. It's already a lot of already properties that are parking in front that don't seem to be objectionable for the type of property that 321 presents.
Yeah.
The reason for the comment is if someone came in with a project that the only way to make sense of it would be to have parking in front, are they closed out by the code as it stands?
I think that I'll look specifically, but there's language in there about encouraging parking on the sides of the building here. There's going to be situations where that's not possible.
Yeah, that's my point.
Or in the rear.
Right. Here's a comment that came a couple years after the furniture place was built. The first proposal had the furniture building in the back and parking in the front. And we worked with them and said, look, our code recommends parking in the back or sides and bring the building forward. Well, when the building was built, I don't think people envisioned what it would actually be when they came around the curve and said, oh, what is that? What's that big building? But they met the code, and I think they designed the site well, but opinions vary. And some people thought that they should have put the building in the back even after it was done. A lot of that could be architecture, but I thought the site was designed well, and they were able to retain some massive oaks on that site, and it is what it is today.
I'll give you an example about some of these chains. Family Dollar came in one time, and the code at that time was to park in the side or rear. Well, they changed the orientation of the building, turned the front of the building over to the side, and left the air conditioning units and the side sticking out toward the highway just to put parking in front of the building. So some of these guys are hardheads.
Some of them know more than one way to skin a cat, too.
That's right.
That's the same way Staples was done in Boone when I worked in Boone.
There's another one.
A big old blank white wall, and I think we've got language in our code that would prohibit that, blank walls. But we also have the building down at Tanger Shops that's got false windows across the highway side because the parking is on the back, access is on the back. It's hard to have windows on all 4 sides of the building when you've got a storefront, dressing rooms, back areas, and all that to work together. It is hard to have it all the ways that you want it.
And that one looks good.
So what our code says in commercial design about parking areas should not be focal points of development unless it would be practical or unnecessary to do so. They should be located away from the streets to the side or rear of principal structures. Parking areas adjacent to streets shall be screened by berms, trees, shrubs, walls, or fences. I don't have a problem with that language. I think it's pretty good. But if it needs to be tougher, we can do that.
I don't think it does for my purposes.
Okay. All right. The next, you talked about case by case. The next thing is about setbacks varying by context areas. There was talk about a 35-foot building height. How do y'all feel about the staggered approach that's saying if you go back further, you can go up with a higher building? Currently, the setback is 20 and the building height is allowed at 50. It is not downtown. It's a highway corridor, but we're not trying to create another downtown, but we want it to be complementary to the theme and the architecture of Blowing Rock. Knowing that is a little higher traffic area, we want the buildings to reflect that feel, not necessarily going to be zero lot line, flat roof buildings. It's not downtown. We're not trying to create is that a pizza order?
Hello? Yes. Hey, Joyce. How are you doing? No, you had your guy voice going.
What's the thought on that, folks, about the setback and height? You want to look at a variable?
Mike Page answers yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Wes. That's the one thing I think that we should do is look at that pretty hard and come up with something that is, that we have a whole new road system out there, and we should have something that kind of goes with that new road system. We have sidewalks on both sides the whole way. And so it seems to me we should be measuring from the sidewalk back, maybe at 45 degrees or some slope up to a certain point, and then let people build at whatever that height is with a maximum, off the sidewalk and or off the front door, so that you don't have stuff that's too close, too high, that's too close, but you can have something that's taller in the back, and if you got a hole in the ground, you can make it taller, but it's still, relative to the sidewalk, it's still uniform. So, so that's something I definitely think, because we have a whole new road system and a whole new look out there, that we should change.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, each context area may have a differing requirement. East side, west side, and further on down toward the Parkway. One size fits all is going to be difficult for that whole stretch. I'm agreeing with Wes, basically.
And I think we can address flexibility, whether it be through conditional use permit or conditional zoning. And I think if you look at the whole package of a development, and concessions could be made, you say, look, I'm willing to allow that because this is going to be a good development and it's going to be a good fit for that piece of property. Even when we have those hard pieces to deal with, I think we can get to a good project in the end. The next comment is about discouraging certain permitted uses. I think, again, you could keep general business as it is, and you can call out specific uses as long as they're not protected by law, with certain restrictions that you can place on those mobile homes and adult businesses and things like that. If there are certain types of uses that you want to prohibit, I think that you can. We will verify that if we're going to strike something out from our use table, And right, you're correct. Since use is not listed in the table or not permitted, I'm unsure what additional limitation we need specific. Let's talk about the one on the corner, the palm reader. Yeah, we had no way to say they couldn't do it. I don't know that they've been open more than 4 days in 8 months, but whatever.
Got that nice sign up there that works for them 24 hours a day.
Yeah. They still have not. I don't think they made enough money to pay for that sign yet. But anyway.
Kevin, how would they get a permit if they're not one of the listed businesses in the general business area? I didn't understand. That's what I was saying. I didn't understand.
It's kind of like office. You know, it's a tough category to place it. It's whether I don't think it's clinical, but it's kind of an office.
What do you use? SIC codes or NAICS? Make an interpretation.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, that's a case in point. Then, if there are things that need to be added to uses that would not be allowed, you could go through a whole litany of things and still not catch the ones that snuck up on you.
It's very general description in our land use code. So it's not sales and rentals of goods. They're not doing that. They're not selling anything. But office is very broad. Office, clerical, research, and services not primarily related to goods or merchandise.
Yeah, it's probably a service then.
How about something like a psychologist's office? Because that's where they're going to go hide.
Office or clinics of physicians or dentists with not more than 10,000 square feet of gross floor area. Another category is operations designed to attract little or no customer or client traffic other than the employees of the entity operating the principal use. That fits. There's not a whole lot of customer traffic. The other category is the broadest is serve clients on the premises such as offices of attorneys, physicians, and other professions, insurance and stockbrokers, travel agents. You could call maybe they're a travel agent.
When you go in, Kevin, what's it like?
I ain't been in, man. I've looked from the front porch, but you can see everything.
Or somebody else's car to drive there.
I don't know what was worse, that or mopeds. But
In retrospect, I kind of like the mopeds.
they weren't going to last long anyway.
Oh, wow.
All right. So if there are some uses that we want to restrict, we can get specific. The next section talks about water quality standards, and I think Doug's still on with us. And
He's dropped off.
okay,
Or maybe
Well-
he's coming back.
that's fine. I just think McGill could provide us that guidance. If this board thinks let's move forward with some recommendations on water quality standards, we can do that, and we'll let the guys with McGill, and they got a full team that can make some recommendations on what we should do with water quality. And I think don't just apply it to general business. Apply it to all all business.
Kevin, can you explain a little bit more how that falls underneath us for planning and zoning, water quality? I mean, I understand the watershed and all that things that we have with the planning and zoning, but quality
Okay. The land use
is what I have a question.
the land use code addresses stormwater. We are in the watershed. All of general business is in the watershed. Our stormwater regulations are not designed for water quality specifically. There is some water quality benefit because it is reducing the amount of flow or storm flow releasing from properties. And our stormwater requirements are very aggressive, much more than Boone. It is very expensive, but we've been requiring it since the mid 80s. So your role, other than the planning board, is the watershed authority in the town. You have we haven't had any, but if there are variances that are granted to the watershed requirements, you are the ones that grant that. Stormwater and water quality and flood control, they kind of go hand in hand, and they cross their boundaries. So if the planning board would make recommendations on any change to the code, any change in land use code, you have a stake in that, and so you're providing a recommendation. Ultimate authority is to council. So one thing to look at is, can we incorporate water quality standards in our stormwater? And if we do, I don't know that we want to increase a burden on that developer that they're already experiencing, but maybe reduce a possibility of reducing some of the storage requirements in an effort to offset and provide better water quality benefits. Maybe we can do both. And so that's where I want to involve McGill, if y'all feel like this is something we want to move forward with.
Kevin, this Pete, I remember during the ad hoc committee meetings that, and everything you said was, but some of the concerns was, where does the money come from to do some of this mitigation? And never really heard an answer to that.
As far as making changes to existing sites,
Yes.
sometimes there's grants out there. There are, I cannot think of the name, Clean Water Management Trust Fund. Sometimes there's money there available for stream bank repair, mitigation efforts like that. What we're dealing with in the 321 corridor is properties that have already developed the stream bank. There's not a whole lot of buffer left in some of them. We are, as administrator, I'm responsible to make sure that the 30-foot buffer from the top of the stream is maintained on properties. Maintained as in no one's encroaching into that. We work with people that have property along the stream and say, look, it would be better if you did not mow it down to the ground, but let it grow up within that 30-foot buffer. And mow it maybe twice a year and let that grass grow up. That will protect the stream bank in these high flow events. But there's money out there. There's money. There is a project that New River Conservancy is involved in. I think y'all have seen the proposals down below the water plant and rebuilding that stream back. I don't know where the status of that is. So they've been an arm of a nonprofit that's gone after some of those funds to do that kind of work. That's a long answer. I don't think I answered it correctly.
No, you did.
Anything else on Mike's comments? Okay. Pete Page's comments, stack rock walls are a good idea and are beautiful. Did anyone look into the cost of doing such a project? And it would be an enormous expense. We have not looked into that. It was just a big, broad picture. Hey, this is what could be done. But yeah, it would come with a price tag, no doubt. But I think it looks great, and maybe it's a project on down the road that the town is involved in. I did not see any mention of how many total parcels available for development. We've kind of talked about some of them. I don't have the list of numbers of properties, but for example, the corner below the furniture market, there's a single family home. There's two single family homes side by side, and that corner that's about 3 acres. That's a property, and it's for sale, and that property is a good potential for redevelopment. There's a small piece on the corner of Holiday Inn that a development proposal did go forward, but they never ended up doing the project. Something to be done now without changing anything would be a head start for development. Clean up the sides of Valley Boulevard, trees, limbs, and brush on the sides of the road, trash and junk, buildings in need of repair and painting. Yes, there are. I agree with that. I'm working with someone right now that on repairing a fence that's looking pretty unsightly. It's right in the plain view. Any further comment on that, Pete?
Just that there's a big opportunity there to make some stretches of that road look a lot better.
Yeah.
But I know that you would have to get the owners to do it, and that'd be a battle. There's no ordinance to make people clean up their lot, I don't imagine.
There is. Even though the road's been built for a couple of years, it's still some of the properties, the remnants that they had are still in transition. I don't know if you're talking about a property that DOT had.
No, it's a residential property.
Okay. Well, if it's residential property that is, we can address a lot of times in the building code if it's dilapidated or something like that. If it's the property, grass grown up, we've had to do that on some on Valley Boulevard.
And the big tract on the corner below the furniture store, it was cleaned up, what, 2 years ago? He went in and bush hogged.
Last year too.
Did a lot of cleaning.
And they did it again last year.
Okay.
Pete's next comment was about compatible ratings for the buildings. Were too high in most cases. If they used a $5, $10 scale, the average rating would have been lower and closer to the correct rating. It's interesting that the ratings were different in the two meetings. The first meeting, the averages were higher. The second meeting, the average ratings were lower. I don't know if it was the makeup or people said, hey, we went in there and we rated too high. If you go in there, rate them lower. I don't know.
That probably didn't happen. I just never seen that sort of survey done with 4 boxes before. Because that's, yes or no.
Yeah.
You get more nuance in a wider range of choices, I think.
Mhm.
But that's all water under the bridge at this point.
Pete, you got a lot here.
Yeah, Kevin, I think after having heard and read all the other comments, I think that those, for the most part, cover most of the things or all the things that I had felt pretty strongly about. So I don't think we need to go and rehash all of that stuff again.
I'll, if you don't mind, a couple of your comments were good points, and I had a little something to say. It'd be real brief. If you look
Okay,
at number
go
4,
ahead.
Number 4, it says consideration be given to a sliding scale that establishes maximum height based on setbacks, and we talked about that already. One thing I didn't mention earlier is we need, if we're going to do that, we also need to look at the side setbacks because it's only an 8-foot setback on the sides. If you can go up with a 50-foot building, that's an 8-foot setback. That's a pretty big building. So we ought to look at the size a little bit too. If a building's going to be that high, we might want to increase that setback a little bit on the sides.
Could we incorporate that in a sliding scale?
Yeah, we could. Number 5 is some setback has increased. Reducing the front setback, several property owners on the quarter have said that increasing the setbacks from 20 to 30 feet would be unfair taken to their property, as they already had to give up property on 321. And I think that's a good point. Now, those property owners, if the property was taken, they were compensated, but it does limit the amount of property that's left available. The last one, limit rooftop mechanical equipment. Sometimes some of it has to be up there, I think. If it's, maybe not, but I'm thinking of restaurants that have the little stacks on top. Maybe they have to be on top, but if they're not on top, they're placed on the side, so they don't go away totally. So some of them are hidden behind a roof parapet that still looks like it's a normal part of the roof. But good comment. I mean, we struggled with the Pizza Hut when they changed, trying to get something to hide their equipment because that building was pretty small and their equipment stood out pretty substantially. Anywhere else? What do y'all?
Kevin,
we're not addressed.
Kevin, this is Pete. I know we had talked about this before, but with the new code changes that are coming,
Right.
is any of those code changes going to have any material effect of what we may do here?
I don't think so. I will mention this. That was extended to August 1st of 2021. So we did buy a little bit of time instead of January 1st with the COVID-19 delays and stuff. So there's a little bit of time we can work. One thing that I pointed out before is that instead of conditional use permits, again, those will be special use from going forward. They'll all be called special use.
Will that change procedurally?
No, it will still be the same for conditional use. I mean, it'll be called a special use. The reason they did it, there's going to be conditional conditional zoning, which we have, and then there'll be special use permits. So special use will be the quasi judicial process and conditional zoning. So the terms are not so close together. They said, let's just call everything that's quasi judicial special use permit. Bill, you know any more from that 160D that?
Yeah, I'll try to take a look at it and see if I spot anything. But yeah, that's the biggie. A lot of these little towns had just crazy stuff. They haven't updated in years. We've got a crew of retired planners that are looking at a lot of these ordinances. So I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Bill, I think there is an annotated version of the new general statutes that's already been published, so that you can go in and look at the annotation of either why they made the change or what the significance of the change was from.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we've got checklists and tons of tools now that we can use to look at an ordinance and kind of gauge how much time it's going to take to bring it up to a standard. So I'll take a look at ours and see. But I don't think it's too bad.
Whose responsibility ultimately will it be to go into our code and make the changes that are necessary?
The town.
Mine. Yep. And those changes, as they're reflected in our code, will come to you for a recommendation and eventually to council for final approval. And there's some things that we have to do. And then there's some things that we have some latitude on how we do it. But it's coming. I'm glad we bought a little bit of time. But we'll have to get through it. Anything else that jumps out from the list or that was not included in the list from the study that you have heartburn about or that you really like? Any member?
I would like to know more about the suggestion of extending the greenway. That goes back to the 2014 comprehensive plan. And it was listed as a high priority in 2014. Has anybody walked that stream bed to see what it would look like?
I've been on parts up and down through there. It's pretty tight.
Joe, would that go through your property? Joe is,
Yes, at one time, Bill Hall came by and said that would come through the property. Anyway.
Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah. At this point, what I'd like to do is hear from each board member any comments that they have, so that if there's any, like you say, heartache or stuff that really is something that they want to get down in writing, then this would be the time to do it. But before I open it up to the board, I'd like to remind us all of the following, and that this won't come as any news to most people. Once before, the planning board was asked by the council to evaluate the downtown business district codes. We formed a subcommittee of the following. It was Mike, Paige, David Harwood, myself, and Kevin as our facilitator. We also had Sue Glenn. We spent many months and hours formulating our thoughts and recommendations. And once completed, they were forwarded to the council for their overview. The end result was that the council did not accept any of our work. This time, we should be very thorough again, which we were then, with our comments from each of the board members and guidance to Kevin to draft our recommendations and concerns so the council will have a clear idea of what needs to be done. So with that, I'll open it up for board members. Mike, you're on the screen. You've written some stuff. Is everything that you've written, is that everything you want to say on that?
Yes, except to comment on the committee that we formed before. A lot of the problem with that was guidance from council, certainly, but the uproar that Civic Association and others packed the room when council considered it. And I think probably blindsided council with objections that they didn't have answers to, that they could have had answers to had there been a longer timeline before it reached them. Does that make any sense?
I would tend to agree with you on that because, you know, we all lived through it.
Is there maybe some way to involve the stakeholders who would be likely to come forward in opposition to anything that involves change?
I had asked Kevin something to that very point. And Kevin, do you want to address it? You had a sort of a pro forma plan that you wanted to follow. Do you want to jump in?
Well, I hope I learned my lesson. But we need to involve the public more, and open the floor up and say, look, this is where we were in as we developed this code year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whatever, year and a half. And let's hear from the people that own property and people that are not invested downtown, and kind of like we did with the 321, and get them in at the American Legion and say, look, what are some things that you like about downtown? If we do this, and let's put it to them, say, if we do this, what are your thoughts? What heartburn do you have about if we make this as our setback, this is our building height? It's a public process, and we were in the details, but I don't think that we worked enough to bring people in. And a lot of times people don't come here. A lot of people are apathetic, and they only want to come out for a fight. They don't want to come out really to participate unless they hear that something's going to be this, and then they come out for the fight. So to involve people, we at least give the opportunity, and I think we might hear some great stuff from people.
So in terms of a timeline, Kevin, on with what you just said, we gather up and we make a proposal that highlights everybody's feelings, and you give it to the council, or is there a step in between by having a public meeting before we go to the council?
I think we have the public meeting with planning board and council, everybody. Open it up.
Okay.
Charrette format, or just drop in and provide comments, kind of like we did with the comprehensive plan back in 13, 14.
Okay.
And I think the code part, we got to keep it simple so people can understand, because there's different views on what this part of the code says. Keep it as simple as we can so that people can get a picture in their mind of what we're talking about, and build consensus as much as we can. Then, after we've built consensus and we have a direction, we'll draft the code, come to planning board for final recommendation, and then on to council for the public hearing. As far as timeline, it's kind of hard to say until we start getting back to meeting in person.
Okay. Yep. Agreed.
Priorities have changed a little bit until we get back flowing in normal procedure. I mean, some of this stuff can be done even remotely, but we got to be able to meet in person and do some of this stuff.
All right. Okay, I'm going to just keep going down the list. Wes, any thoughts from you?
No, really, the only thing that I think we definitely need to do is come up with a standard off the sidewalk, since we have this new road system, so that all the roads, all the buildings we've got some kind of similar requirement, and are starting to look similar off the sidewalk system on both sides.
Okay. Joe, your thoughts?
That I feel like we're going to have an issue with that, because when this new road came through, a lot of us would drop down. We're 6 feet lower than we were. The places up the street are low. I don't know how we can have a standard building.
Okay.
My point is that on the road, on the buildings that actually drop down, you actually get a little taller building height. So therefore the roof lines along from the sidewalk level are more similar regardless of where they start from. That's what I probably didn't say that well, but that's what I mean.
I might have misunderstood you, but I'm good with that. That's going to, just create an extra thing for us to think about.
Okay. Pete Page.
I don't think I have anything useful to say. I'm still trying to catch up with what's going on. I like the idea of the graduated height requirements. I think that we need to look into that. But other than that, I've really got nothing else to say.
Okay. Bill, your thoughts?
Nothing new. I agree with Wes that you've got about the angle from the sidewalk, and given and just being able to explain it to folks that does give you an advantage if your property is now below street level. It really gives you more opportunity to develop a higher building, and in turn creates a more uniform look across the entire road.
Okay. Kim?
I'm in agreement about the setbacks with the height, doing the ratios. I think that would be good, as well as the sides that we had spoke about earlier that Kevin was talking about. And I am, the water quality kind of took me by surprise, just because having that type of knowledge and expertise, that was a little overwhelming for me. So I was glad to hear there was somebody to depend upon that. So.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, wrapping things up, at least on the discussion here, I think you've stated that you'll put all these thoughts and suggestions together, and at the appropriate time move them forward to the council. Is that correct?
Yes, I think they may be wanting an update at the June meeting, so I'll be busy summarizing the comments tonight, providing them some of the things that you'd already put in print. And that's what they asked us to do, is
Right.
to take a look at it and provide feedback from the planning board. And I know sometimes that they don't go with necessarily y'all's recommendation all the time, but they do hold your opinion in high regard. I know that because they want to send a lot of stuff to you for your thoughts. They like to hear your perspective. So that's what we've done, and it's hard sometimes the way that we're meeting. I'm glad we can do something. And that study was pretty in depth, and it's a lot to digest, and it's really just the starting point for more detailed a more detailed plan, whether it be how we address water quality, code changes, uses that we may not want to see, the color chart. There's a lot in there. But there are properties that are going to develop over time, and it's been a long time since we looked at our commercial design standards, especially on the bypass. And this is something that was in our comprehensive plan to look at and focus on it. I'll do that. Appreciate those comments, and we've got people out there that on our planning board that are invested, that have property. Kim and Joe, they have property out there. I like to hear from them as it affects them directly.
Absolutely. Before I forget, did you get any letters from the public or any comments or phone calls on this meeting?
No, not last week either.
Okay.
I did get they've got a new lady that's working at the Mountain Times in Thomas's place, and she was asking, I cannot remember her name, Addie or Allie or something, but I'm gonna follow up with her, and I think she probably wants to do some comments or some quick story on it. So I am going to follow up with her.
Okay. Okay, if we're finished with that, other business or new business, Kevin?
I don't have anything. I can give you updates if you've got questions about anything else that's happening. I was encouraged to see the farmers market today. I didn't think it was going to be there. The other, the 1150 Main Street, the new building down near Town Tavern, moving right along. I think they're looking at mid to late July on completion of the front building. So that's good. We've had several new home applications that's good. That's a good sign. We like to see that. We're waiting on comments back from the not Speckled Trout, the Rainy Lodge. We reviewed their construction plans, and we're waiting on them to come back. We gave them a list of comments, and so we're waiting to hear back from them. Blue Ridge Hotel is moving along. They're doing all their subsurface work, plumbing, stormwater's already in place. And then they'll be buttoning up the parking lot and curbing and then starting up with the building. Speckled Trout, the work that they're doing at expanding their deck, they're trying to do that before they fully open. It's a good time to do it. That's about all.
Kevin, is there anything pending on the bypass properties that we should know?
No, I haven't had any applications. I think the country club is going to add a new pro shop, so that will be coming before on board at some point.
Okay. Any other board members? Okay. I'll just be ready for their comments and how studious everybody was in presenting their thoughts. And if there's nothing else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Wes.
Okay. All in favor?
Uh,
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you very much.